If you're thinking about paying an immigration lawyer thousands of dollars to handle your K-1 visa, stop. At least until you understand exactly what you're paying for. Because when my wife and I started the K-1 process, I hired what I thought was an affordable immigration lawyer. I thought I was paying for experience, guidance, somebody who would make sure everything was completed correctly because I wasn't sure how to do it all and I didn't want to make a mistake. Instead, she sent me the paperwork and basically said, here, fill this out, and then I'll mail it in for you, which was frustrating, but that's what I did. And then 6 months later, I got an email that said, oh yeah, there's one more thing you need to do. So I kept asking myself, what exactly am I paying for? I could have done that myself and put it in an envelope and mailed it off. And it took at least 6 months longer for them to mail it than it would have if I would have just done it myself. And stick with me till the end because I'm going to give you a simple 3-level test to determine whether you should do the K-1 petition yourself, pay an attorney for a one-time consultation or review, or hire somebody to represent you through the entire process. Welcome back to The Global Immigrant. I'm Brian, and my wife and I personally went through the K-1 visa process, and now we're breaking down the complete journey step by step so you can understand what is coming before you reach it. This is episode 2 of our complete K-1 visa guide. Today we're answering one question. Do you actually need to hire an immigration lawyer for your K-1 visa? So let's start with the direct answer. No. USCIS does not require you to hire a lawyer or a representative to file a K-1 petition. But that does not automatically mean filing without legal help is the right decision for everybody. So I understand that. You probably do not need a lawyer. For a normal, straightforward K-1 case, you do not need an immigration attorney, period, full stop, end of sentence. USCIS says directly that you do not need a representative to file its forms. You're allowed to prepare the petition yourself, file it yourself, and represent yourself before USCIS. The process looks intimidating because it involves government forms, supporting documents. There's a lot of instructions, but just because it's intimidating does not mean it's complicated at all. Form I-129F is mainly asking for facts that you already know and can gather pretty quickly. So, who are you? Who is your fiance? How did you meet? Have you met in person? Are you both legally free to marry? Can you provide evidence supporting what you've told them? That's basically what the I-129F is. That is information only you and your fiance can provide. A lawyer is going to ask you these same questions and use the same information you give them. If you don't have an actual legal problem, here's what hiring a lawyer may look like in practice. They'll send you the form I-129F or a questionnaire that's going to ask the same information and tell you to fill that out. Then you'll send it back to them. They'll tell you to go get your divorce decrees, your travel records, proof that you've met, photographs of you guys together, messages, any other pieces of evidence that you can provide that you guys have met, and all this is above board. The lawyer cannot create your relationship evidence or gather the personal records. That's something only you can access. You still have to find it, request it, organize it, send it to them. You have to do all that yourself. They're going to arrange it into a packet. Once again, that's if they don't have you do that for them. And then they're going to put everything together and mail it. So in other words, you may be paying thousands of dollars for somebody to assemble and mail paperwork that you're going to have to assemble and mail to them first. You are still doing the overwhelming majority of the work because you're the only person who knows the history and has access to your evidence. And just because it's a lot of paperwork doesn't automatically make it complicated. Have you been divorced? Well, then you gather your final divorce decree showing that the marriage has legally ended. Same if your fiance has been divorced. You'll have to gather that too. If you don't have that issue, well then you can skip that part. But if you do, that may give you more paperwork to collect, but divorce by itself is not some unusual legal obstacle that's going to require thousands of dollars in attorney fees. The same is true for previous addresses, employment history, proof of income, travel dates, relationship evidence. That's just a paperwork problem. That's not even a legal problem. So once again, you don't need a lawyer to do all that, because if you hire one, they're going to have you do that and send it to them. So let's also talk about the cost. The K-1 process is already expensive enough before you even hire an attorney. At today's fees, the Form I-129F is going to cost you $675. The K-1 visa fee is another $265. After you enter the United States and get married, the current adjustment of status filing fee for most adults is $1,440. That's $2,380 in government filing fees alone. And that doesn't include medical examinations, vaccinations, supporting documents, translations if you need it, photographs, travel to the consulate for the interview that's going to happen later on when your fiance has to sit down for an interview. That may require plane tickets, like it did for us. Now add another $2,000 to $3,000 for a lawyer on top of that. You basically doubled the cost of an already expensive process, and you're still the one gathering the evidence and filling out the information. For a straightforward case, just ask yourself whether having somebody arrange your paperwork into a folder and mail it is really worth doubling your total cost. If you can read the current instructions, answer the questions honestly, gather all the evidence you need, stay organized, double check your work, if you can complete a straightforward K-1 petition yourself, what do you need a lawyer for? That's exactly why we are creating this series. We're going to walk through the process step by step so you know what to prepare, what to file, and what happens at each phase of the process. Now, there are specific situations where hiring an attorney or just seeking professional legal advice is probably going to make sense. If you have a serious criminal history, previous immigration violations, if you've had removal proceedings, a waiver issue, multiple previous fiancé petitions, that could be an issue you might want to hire a lawyer for. All these situations, you may want an attorney. Depending on the issue, you may need full representation. You may only need a consultation to sort some of this out, right? Maybe you don't need full attorney's fees. Maybe you can just have an hour consultation and figure all this stuff out. But being nervous about the paperwork is not by itself a reason to spend thousands of dollars. So before you hire anyone, ask yourself, do we actually have a legal problem, or do we just simply have paperwork to fill out? If it's only paperwork, you probably don't need a lawyer. So let's bring this back to the 3-level test I promised at the beginning. Level 1, both of you qualify, and the only challenge is completing the paperwork. Do it by yourself. Level 2, you have one specific question in an otherwise straightforward case. We'll pay for a consultation or a one-time review, not a full representation from a lawyer. Level 3, you have a serious legal complication, criminal history, immigration violations, removal proceedings, fraud, misrepresentation, or a possible waiver. That's when a qualified immigration attorney may be worth the money. So for example, say you have a medical issue or something of that nature to where you cannot physically fly to another country to have met your fiance in the previous 2 years. There is a waiver you can apply for and fill out. Something like that, maybe you need an attorney. That's a great example. But for most ordinary couples, this K-1 visa is a paperwork process, not a courtroom case. But submit the most complete petition you can the first time. Oversubmit. Send more than what you think you need. If it says send 2 things from this list of 5, send 4. Don't let the possibility of a request for more evidence scare you into spending thousands of dollars before you even start. Have confidence. Read the instructions, make a checklist, take your time, check your work, and save that attorney money for filing fees, your medical exam, plane tickets. Plane tickets are expensive. Round trip to the Philippines and back is gonna basically be what you're gonna spend on a lawyer, okay? And if you're still nervous about getting started on this and the whole process, don't worry. In episode 3, we're gonna walk through everything you need to prepare before filing so that you don't miss anything. Your personal history, relationship evidence, documents, and information for the petition. The goal is to have everything ready ahead of time so you're not scrambling when it's time to fill out the form and mail it in. Then in episode 4, we're going to open the current I-129F and go through it line by line together. We're going to break it all down so you don't miss anything, and if there's anything you're concerned about, anything that's a little vague that you're not sure what to put, we're going to go through that. So if you're doing this yourself, leave a comment, tell me what is tripping you up in this process so I can be sure to include that in that video. But make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next video or the next step in this complete K-1 guide we're putting together. I'm Brian, this is The Global Immigrant. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.